My final guest is Clarkstown Police Chief Ray McCullagh. Welcome, Chief McCullagh.
Thank you.
So, Chief, I'm delighted to have you on Hometown Happenings. This is a great opportunity for the residents of Clarkstown to learn a little bit about their new police chief. You've just been sworn in as the 11th police chief in the history of our town.
Correct.
And, you know, for the benefit of our viewers, maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about your background and what brought you to this point in your career and in your life.
Sure. I've been with the Clarkstown Police Department for a little over 28 years. Prior to that, I was a New York City police officer. I served in the Bronx for a little over 3 years. Right. So I live right here in town. Mm-hmm. I have 5 kids, and 3 of whom are still in Clarkstown schools.
So you're, which I think is a great aspect. I mean, we had great qualified candidates. We had 3 eligible candidates for the chief position, and they're all qualified. But you certainly are very involved within the community, which I think distinguished you, clearly, with your background in service. Let's jump back to the beginning. So you're a near lifelong Clarkstown resident. You were born and raised, you were born in the Bronx but raised here? Born
in the Bronx, moved up here in 1972, so I've been here for quite a while.
Right.
Yeah.
And you come from a family of law enforcement, correct?
Yep. My dad was a New York City police officer for 21 years, served in the 47th Precinct in the Bronx, and my older brother was a police officer before me in the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Right. And you also had an uncle that was a police officer?
My Uncle Joe was a police detective for many years. He's been retired a long time now, but yeah.
Right. So you're second generation, law enforcement, and I think you had mentioned when you were sworn in recently about the conversation you had with your father.
Yeah.
Because you had the opportunity to come to Clarkstown while you were on the job in New York City. Maybe you can relay that story.
Yeah. So in 1989, I got a call that Clarkstown was offering me a position here, but I think I was 25. I was young. I was single. I was living up here, but working in the city. It was a lot of fun, exciting, a great time, and I told my dad about it, and he goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I think I may stay in the city because it's a lot of fun." And he was always very laid back. My dad kind of let me make my own decisions with some gentle guidance. But this time he just looked at me and said, "No, you're taking the Clarkstown job." And I said, "All right." He was never that strong on anything. I said, he must really know, and did it. And I've been thankful ever since. It's been the best thing I ever did in my career.
That's great. And so you were 4 years in the NYPD, essentially. So where'd you serve down there?
So after I got out of the police academy, my first 6 months, I served in the entire Upper West Side of Manhattan. And that was a great education because that's right at the height of the crack epidemic in New York City. And I covered Washington Heights, which was kind of the epicenter of that. So I was there for 6 months. And then after that, I was assigned to the 52nd Precinct, which is in the North Central Bronx. Mm-hmm. Again, I learned probably more in those 3 years than I've learned since about police work and crime. So it was excellent training. Right.
The 5-2 is it's a large precinct, probably one of the larger ones in the Bronx, and covers a large area. And at that time, back in the late 80s, really it was a change in the community. And really had a lot of movement. You had a large Irish community that was kind of dwindling. Yep. You had some newer ethnic groups coming in. There was certainly some real rise in the drug issues in that area. So great place to be able to cut your teeth.
It was a little bit of everything. Very diverse.
Mm-hmm. So then you come out to Clarkstown, in 1989. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. What were your first assignments here in Clarkstown?
Right. So I was a patrol officer, and I actually I think it was 10 weeks I got here. I had to ride with another officer as part of the field training program, and that was great. I even though I had been a police officer, it's very different policing up here. So and all of the paperwork obviously was different. So I learned quite a bit in that, and then. I was a patrol officer until 1997 when I got assigned to the Rockland County Narcotics Task Force as an investigator. And that was great. That was a great experience. I worked with a lot of great people back then that were in the office, and kind of saw a different aspect of law enforcement and learned a lot in the 3 years I was there.
So without giving away too many secrets of, knowing that it was 20 years ago, what's the experience like of an officer on a special detail like that with the Narcotics Task Force? What was it like for you?
It was very different because I had my whole career. I had been working in uniform, and it was kind of about one-on-one with the community and people and stuff. And this, you were in plain clothes. You kind of had to blend in as best you could, and everything with narcotics was just it was just so different. And but I learned so much stuff that I had never known before, and I had been a cop already for 11 years when I went there. So definitely a different side of the policing view.
Right. And so you were plain clothes. You were doing some undercover work.
Yeah, I was an investigator, plain clothes, a lot of surveillance on drug houses and drug suspects and stuff. Very interesting.
And probably working with confidential informants and things of that nature.
Yep, and wiretap investigations and all that. It was very interesting. It was a high learning curve, but it was great.
So what'd you do after the task force? What's the next step?
So the reason I left the task force in 2000, I got promoted to patrol sergeant. So I came back in uniform again, another transition, but a good one. I actually had missed kind of the more personal aspects, police work of dealing one-on-one with people. And so that was kind of good. It was a welcome change at the time, and enjoyed it thoroughly.
And how long were you a patrol sergeant?
So I was a patrol sergeant for 6 years. In 2006, I became a special operations sergeant, which at the time we covered the community police officers, the anti-crime squad, the traffic division, and the canine squad. So that was great. Learned a lot. And one of the biggest things I learned is that in our town, supervising the traffic division, we're fortunate that we don't have a very, very high violent crime rate, but many of the complaints the citizens make now are traffic related, and to them it's very serious, as you can imagine, with speeding cars and their kids in the street and stuff. So that was good. I met a lot of people, went to a lot of civic meetings and stuff, and kind of got the tenor of what people were looking for in the town.
Right. And then I guess the next step in your career, you became a lieutenant.
Yep. In 2009, I became a patrol lieutenant. That was a great job. So I commanded a squad of about 20 police officers and 3 sergeants. And about a year later, I got the opportunity to attend the FBI National Academy.
Sure. Let's talk about that. So,
Sure.
Explain that to our viewers. What's entailed with the FBI?
Yeah.
Academy?
So it's a high-level police executive training school put on by the FBI for law enforcement officials from all over the world. So I had to go to Quantico, Virginia for that, and it was a 10-week program, and it was run in conjunction with the University of Virginia, so you got academic credits as well, both bachelor and master level credits. And there were 250 members in my 10-week class, and I met guys from Portugal, Cameroon, the Philippines, all over the world, and then of course mostly all cops from all over the country. And it was a fantastic experience. I still keep in touch with a lot of the guys to this day.
Right. In fact, we're filming this just a few short days after the tragedy in Vegas, and I think you knew some folks from the Vegas Police Department that had attended the academy with you, correct?
Yeah. There was a deputy chief in my National Academy class from Las Vegas, and it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but at the time, we had talked a lot about their active shooter protocols and stuff, because obviously they would be a prime target just from the amount of people in hotels and stuff. So, and that's the great thing about the academy. You meet people and you can share thoughts and ideas and even policy. Right. So it was excellent.
And I guess your last stop before you became chief, you transitioned from patrol lieutenant to admin lieutenant. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, that was I started training for that last November, and I took over in January as the administrative lieutenant. I learned a lot. I learned a lot that I didn't know I didn't know. It was the other side of police work a bit with budgeting and a lot of the finance and training and equipment and stuff. And that prepared me greatly. These 9 months prepared me greatly for the job I'm in now, because now I've seen both sides of the fence.
Right. So, Chief, let's just talk a little bit about the department itself. I mean, we've done some downsizing.
Yep.
Thankfully, through the working with the PBA and the police administration, we were able to set some targets, and for the first time in very many years, 2017 actually saw a reduction in the police department budget by just over $2 million, and that was through some planned reductions and some smart management, and there's a commitment now, and you'll be tasked, with really trying to help us find more efficiencies within the department that won't jeopardize public safety. So let's just talk about the department in general. Right now, we have, I think, our approved complement of officers is 156, but we're somewhat under that with some retirements.
Correct.
We have a group of officers that are being processed as we speak that will. It looks like, I think, 5 or 6 that are coming in from other police departments.
Yes.
And they'll go through that 10-week field training program, and they'll hit the streets in Clarkstown probably early 2018.
That's correct, yep.
And then we have an additional 4 officers that will be coming in that are going through the, looks like the police academy in Orange County.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully. And those officers probably won't hit the streets until next October, correct?
Yes, between, I believe the academy is approximately 6 months, and then for officers that were not prior service officers, they have to do a 14-week field training officer program. So it does take a little bit of time to get guys trained up, but we'll be good. Right. And hiring the officers with prior service definitely is a huge help. We save obviously 6 months in the process of getting them on the street.
Right. So let's just talk a little bit about what you see as some of the top priorities and challenges that you'll be facing, now as the 11th police chief in Clarkstown Police Department.
Yeah. So one of the things, obviously, and I've spoken about it several times now, was the police community relations. It's so important. We can't do it without the community, and vice versa. It has to be a partnership, because there's 95,000 other sets of eyes out on the street in addition to us, and so in that vein, this past weekend, I was out at 2 community events. Saturday, I was at the India Cultural Society of Rockland Festival, which was very nice, and met a lot of nice people I had never met before. I had to give a brief speech, and one of the things I said to them, and I'll say to everyone, is this might have been the first time you met me, but it certainly won't be the last time, because I plan on being out and about in the community and meeting everyone, and love to hear everyone's ideas. And then I was at the New City Street Fair on Sunday, which was a very nice, very beautiful day. Right. And a nice time. So
to that end, I know that one of the things we've also talked about is really the opioid epidemic, which
Absolutely.
is on everybody's mind, and unfortunately we've had a number of deaths here within the town. And it really requires, I think, a comprehensive strategy and approach that really is going to come from the federal government all the way on down through the local police department and the schools. And so no, that's going to be certainly a priority of the police department, working collaboratively, with this, with the other levels of government and with the other law enforcement entities, because it really is a crisis.
It is, and you'd probably be hard pressed to find any family in the town that has not been touched by this epidemic. It's horrible. We're losing an entire generation to this. It's horrendous.
Right. So I know that some of the other things, Chief, that we've talked about, I know that there'll be some restructuring that's going to take place within the police department.
Correct.
I know one of the things that we've talked about involves our internal affairs. Maybe you could speak about that.
Yeah, so we're going to reinstate the position of the professional standards lieutenant. I think it's one of the most important things that the community knows, that the department is beyond reproach, and that any allegations of misconduct by any officers would be investigated thoroughly and professionally. Right. So I plan on hopefully by next week having that position in place.
So and that essentially the process that had been that position had been eliminated, but essentially as issues would come up, there would be an a la carte assignment of lieutenants who would handle that.
Correct. And the thing with that is if you didn't get a case for a while, it was the officers. It's a very difficult investigation to do, and they weren't. There wasn't enough experience, I'd say. So we're when we have a full-time professional standards lieutenant, they can attend much of the training and do it as they'll be a lot more experienced and better, and then we'll have another lieutenant with them for any investigation. So there's two sets of eyes on it,
Right.
and I know that'll be a lot better system.
Right, and I think the other big change is in most police departments, the practice is that the internal affairs officer, reports the highest administration within the department, and that really wasn't happening here. Just it was done differently. They didn't report directly to the chief; they reported to the captain. Correct. So now the internal affairs will, as it should be in most departments where it is, will have a direct line up to the chief of police.
That is correct. The professional standards lieutenant will report directly to me.
Right. And now one other change that we've talked about, we have a civilian complaint and civilian advisory board that really has been inactive for very many years within the town. I think just recently, it was brought to my attention that one of the members of that board, volunteer board, had actually put in his retirement papers and or letter of resignation. It's not a job; they're volunteers. But he had indicated that he thought the last time they had actually met was under Supervisor Holbrook, which was about 15 years ago. So I know one of the other changes we talked about is actually reviving that board and having regular meetings where that can really become an asset and kind of dovetail with the community policing aspect of it.
Exactly. Yep.
So looking forward to that as well. Chief, I guess kind of in the time that we have left, maybe we can just very briefly, you had mentioned earlier, you're very involved in the community. You've lived here pretty much your entire life. What other information do you want to impart to our residents about your new tenure now as Clarkstown Police Chief?
Right. So, anyone that has a question or concern, please feel free to call the station. We are very receptive. And you're going to see me out on the lacrosse field, the soccer field, school functions, DARE graduations, everywhere. If you run into me, come on up, introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you. At the New City Street Fair last week, tons of people I had never met before. It was kind of odd because, I wasn't used to that. But people coming up, congratulating me, and introducing themselves, and it was wonderful. Great. So absolutely.
Great. Well, Chief McCullagh, I want to thank you for your service to our community. You're going to be a fixture in the Clarkstown Police Department now as its chief. It's as its 11th chief in the history of our distinguished police department in our town. Clarkstown is the 14th largest town by population in all of New York State, and the Clarkstown Police Department is one of the largest police departments in all of New York State for town police departments. And so it's a very, very key position, and I look forward to very many years of working with you and you working with the police department to help bring it forward, turn the page, and bring it forward to a new generation, if you will. There's going to be a number of retirements over the next number of years while you'll be chief. There'll be new officers that'll be coming in, and really the face of the department will look very different over the next couple of years, and with you at the helm. So thanks for being a wonderful guest, and congratulations.
Thanks, Supervisor. Thank you.
And we'll be right back.